participants, you are welcome to the second segment of the training for this morning. We've had the first session, and I have no doubt in my mind that our participants have taken something away from the first segment. So now we are starting the second segment of this program. And we have our facilitator with us. But before I call her, I'd like to quickly introduce her to our distinguished participants. Our facilitator for this morning is a partner at the Acuity Partners and leads the corporate governance, private, and family wealth theme. Our practice areas cover aspects of private wealth management, family, business advisory, with special emphasis on corporate governance, mergers and acquisitions, real estate advisory, and startup advisory. She provides legal advisory services on business compliance and regulatory issues in aspects of business and operations of businesses in Nigeria. She also has experience in offering company secretarial services to corporates and advises them on the establishment of corporate governance structures. She has been involved in conducting legal due diligence investigations for corporates, including advising on investment models. She has provided advice in mergers and acquisitions, private equity, and corporate restructuring deals in the fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, financial services, technology, media, and entertainment and agricultural sectors. She's also advised clients on corporate rescue mechanisms for companies in distress. Our facilitator for this morning is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK and has experience in commercial arbitration and mediation. She has served as both counsel and registrar in arbitration proceedings and is an advocate for using alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Olufunke Olumide, partner, corporate governance, private and family wealth in Acuity Partners, to make her presentation. Olufunke Olumide, please, ma, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes. Participants, please confirm that you can hear.
No, they can't. They won't be able to read.
Good morning.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Iksan, for this opportunity to speak. Sir Essien has done a lot. He has laid a very good foundation for us to build on. And so I'll just get right into it. So I'll just take us through the table of contents. So basically, this morning, we'll talk about family business. I will go deeper in talking about family business, the stages of growth in family business, family and business governance, because they are two separate things, two separate systems that families and businesses need. I'll talk about them separately as well, and then just give a few guidelines on succession, because Essien has really given us the lowdown on succession. Yes, so by way of an overview, family businesses constitutes the world's oldest and most dominant form of business organizations. So, you know, as human beings, we are very relational. And typically when you want to do anything that involves profit, you you go to choose your blood relatives. You speak with your wife or your husband to say, oh, let's set up this business, or you speak with your brother, your sister to set up the business. That is the nature of man. You first want to secure your loved ones before other people. So this is why, it says that family businesses constitute the world's oldest form of business organizations, because that is where most businesses start from. Now, the common knowledge is that, with family businesses, because they are a different breed of companies, it is important that, the mainstream corporate governance that we have for other companies where there are no blood relatives cannot exactly work or are not sufficient for family businesses. So it's important that we establish, governance structures that deal with the two systems at play in a family business, which would be the family and the business. And what a good strategy that we usually advocate for is that the systems that are put in place are such that create a great balance between the emotional factor of the family and the profitable factor of the business. We find that some businesses tilt more towards the family, and so every money that comes into the company is just pumped into the family. That's where, the groceries for the family comes from the profit of the business. And, there's no clear-cut line. The idea for most businesses is to make profit. And so if all the profit is going back to the family, many a times those businesses are not sustainable over a long period of time. So what we usually say is that family businesses can improve their odds of survival by setting the right governance structures in place. Okay. So now the concept of corporate governance. Saesian really spoke about corporate governance. And so I'm just going to say a few things about it. Now, the concept of corporate governance in simple terms is about how companies are controlled and managed. It's not a body. It's not something that is tangible. It's not something we can hold on to. It is basically systems, principles, rules, mechanisms through which a company runs its operations. It is usually about ensuring that, the company's shareholders and stakeholders are taken into proper account at all times, and all the interests are balanced. A wider definition that I've written here, speaks to the fact that there are structures and processes for the direction and control of businesses. And what corporate governance does is to ensure that the relationships between the management, the board of directors, the controlling shareholders, minority shareholders, and all the stakeholders are balanced. Is to ensure that, all these relationships are balanced, everyone's interests are balanced. This is really why, just like public governance, this is really why we advocate that, companies put in some of these systems to ensure that, all relationships are balanced. Now go straight ahead to family business. What is a family business? A family-owned business is any company that is owned by 2 or more family members. I know that, these days we greet our friends with, hey, bro, or hello, sis. And, friends have become family. We say that, there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother and all of that. But for the proper definition of family business, there has to be the blood relationship. It has to be people who are related by blood. So it can either be siblings, it can be husband and wife, it can be cousins, but there has to be that blood relation. So a family-owned business is any company owned by 2 or more family members, and the family holds majority control or ownership. This is a topic for another day, control and ownership. I know many a times we merge both, but they actually mean different things. But so a family business is one where the family either holds majority control or ownership of the business. I like the IFC's definition here. It speaks to the fact that, it adds the extra leg, which speaks of bringing in descendants. So the definition says that your family business refers to a company where the voting majority is in the hands of the controlling family, including the founders who intend to pass the business on to their descendants. Now, many a times, these companies just start off with husband and wife, or start up with siblings. And, by the time they bring in investors, by the time they make a lot of money, many of them exit the business. And at that stage, it's no longer a family business. So the driving force, or the main thing with family businesses would be that there has to be an intention to pass the business to descendants. Where there's no intention to pass it to descendants, it might as well just be, an ordinary corporate as it were. Now, I have written here some well-known family businesses that we can find. I'm sure some of these names, ring a bell in your mind. If we go to everyone's houses now, we'll find that, there's one Samsung product in your house. If it's not your fridge, it's your TV, or it's your home theater system. Some of us drive Hyundai motors. Some of us, have Ford cars. Some of us have, and I put two Nigerian family businesses here, which is the Cousins Motors and Dangote Group. Some of us shipped in our Ford motors through Cousins. I know those are two family businesses that are actually working hand in hand. Now, these are businesses that started so many years ago. I was going through a case study on the Sebi's business, and they started in 1886, and they are still existing till today because of the sustainability and all the governance structures that they have put in place. It's actually a family business, and they are now in 4 different continents. So as you can see from these companies, these are well-known family businesses. And if we decide to do a case study on these businesses, we will find that, from the very early stages, they had put in some structures, which is the bane of why, they are still existing till today. Yes, so now we'll look into the stages of growth in family business. At the initial stage of a family business, it usually starts with one person that brings in, sometimes it's 2 people or just one person, the founder or the founders, who just has the notion of, oh, let me start up a business. And, from that stage, it usually lies on the shoulder of the founder to know the direction of the business. And so many a times, they start off as, oh, let me just set up something to bring in profit. And over time, sometimes they then say, okay, I want this to be sustainable. I want this to live beyond me. And so when I die, I still want this company to exist. At that point, they begin to put in some structures where they intend for it to be passed down to their descendants. Then we know that they are building a family business. Some of the issues that may arise at that founder stage will be issues on succession. As Sir Essien said, he mentioned the man who really wanted his son to be a part of the business. And he sent his son abroad, and his son went into music. Those are little issues that come up and at the founder stage. Sustainability is at the bane of their hearts at that point. They want to ensure that, the business succeeds them. They want to ensure that leadership transitions are smooth, because at the founder stage, not many structures might be put in place, because sometimes it's just 2 people. Those 2 people, just like a question that one of my colleagues asked this morning, those 2 people are the management, they're the directors, they are the shareholders, they are everything at that stage. And so, all the decisions lie with them. But for them to fully establish a family business that will succeed them, they need to put in some estate planning rules. They need to set in some transition plans, put in some succession plans. So those are the dominant issues with the founder stage. Now, the next stage will be the siblings partnership stage. So at this point, the founders have probably handed over to their children. So in a situation where they have about 6 children, those 6 children get married. And so we have 6 families. Although they may be bearing, similar surnames, they are tied by blood, but there has to now be a form of teamwork and harmony. Those are some of the issues that begin to arise at this stage, the sibling stage. They'll also have a succession problem, because at the stage where there are 6 people, the founders cannot hand over to all 6 people. Some person may have to, spearhead the entire team. Some person may be involved in operations. Some person may be involved in other arms of the business. So at this sibling stage, what they need to do is to maintain teamwork, maintain harmony, sustain the family ownership, because some of the statistics that we have on family businesses are that, even where they succeed into the second generation, by the second generation, the number of family businesses that die off are a large number, because there's that rivalry that comes into place amongst the children. You never know, what can happen when money, wealth comes into place. Sometimes, that your loving sister may not be so loving, especially because, at that point, many of them are married and they are external people, they are non-family members that have also come on board to become family members. And so there are a lot of issues that arise at this stage, which need to be addressed. But, with proper structures, some of these issues can actually be mitigated. I'm not saying that, they would totally not come up, but they can be mitigated. Now, the third stage I have written here is the Cousins Confederation. At this point, the family is so large. So picture me saying, you started with 2 people, husband and wife. We've moved on to 6 families at the sibling stage. And now we are at the cousins stage. The cousins stage is now the siblings' children. So 6 families, each of them having 4 children each. At this point, we're already talking over 30 family members in one business. The truth is that all 30 people cannot be on the board. All 30 people cannot take all the core decisions. All 30 people cannot be involved in the operations of the business. And at this stage, it is now important that, there are some structures, there are some mechanisms, there are some processes that need to be in place just so that the business is running well and the family is also running well. So some of the dominant issues that arise at this stage are issues of allocation of capital, dividends, debt, profit levels. Sir Ese mentioned that, owners take on different roles in the business. Some people are just owners. Some people are owners and managers. Some people are owners, directors, and managers. Some people who are not in the business, but who are owners may begin to, become disgruntled and say, oh, why are we not declaring dividend this year? Those issues begin to arise at this stage, and you're suspecting your cousin, you're suspecting your uncle's son and saying, oh, that guy doesn't really like me. So maybe that, and he's in charge of management. That's why we're not declaring dividends. And for those who are not actively involved in the business, they're not getting a salary from the business. The profit that comes to them will come from dividends. And so where the company decides not to declare dividends and there are no proper rules or structures around that, it may lead to an issue. So at this stage, there'll be a lot of conflict resolution that needs to come in place. Because we have over 30 family members now, or 40 family members, the issues of, who is participating in the business will come up. At this point, you may begin to also redefine the family vision, the mission of the family, as well as, how is the family still linked with the business? Do we want to expand to another continent? Do you want to bring in investors? What amount of our ownership are we willing to, dilute just to bring in more capital? All of that would need to come up. And, with proper structures, these issues can be mitigated. So we will now proceed to family governance and business governance. I have tried to split it into 2. Thankfully, Sir Etienne has spoken extensively on business governance. So I'm only going to talk about 2 things on that business governance. I've written here, shareholders agreement, board of directors, advisory board, and management team. If you look at a typical company, you would notice that, these are some of the structures that are evident to all and that are there. Apart from advisory board, which I will talk about, towards the end of this session. But for family governance, we have the family constitution. And, sometimes these other policies like the employment policy, shareholding policy, remuneration policy may form part of the constitution. But, the constitution is like the ground norm, just as we call it the ground norm, the constitution of Nigeria is the ground norm for the nation, it's also the ground norm for the family. Another part under family governance would be the family governance institutions, where we have the family assembly, family council, family office, and then the different committees. I will now go deeper into the issue of family governance. Now, it might look funny or strange that I'm talking about family governance, because you might be wondering, we're related by blood. I love my brother. I love my sister. Why do I need to put in all these structures? Why do I need to have a family constitution between my siblings and I? But the truth is, where, especially where the families are getting larger, where the families are involved in businesses, and you do not want, you didn't set up the business just to finance the family. You also set up the business to make profits. You want the business to be desirable to non-family members to come and walk in. It's important that the family aspect, which is the emotional side of the business, has some measure of processes and structures that regulate them. The truth is that where in instances where the governance is basically in the company and there's no governance on the family side, wherever there are family issues and the family holds majority shares or holds controlling power in a company, it would definitely affect the company over time. And before you know it, the issues get to the point where some family members want to sell their shares, and they sell it to external non-family members. Before you know it, the family has been diluted so much, they have no more ownership, they have no more control. And it's at this stage that you then realize that, oh, this was a family business 20 years ago. It's no longer a family business, which is why we advocate that, there's a family governance system in place to, help family members, but help them with their interests and balance all their desires as regards the company. So the first one we'll be looking at is family constitution. The family constitution is also known as, the family creed, family rules and regulation, or family protocol. It's a formal document that describes the relationship between the family and the business. So the family constitution can be very wide, and it can be very broad, it can be very narrow. There's no rule, there are no rules, so to speak. It's really what works for the family. So typically what we advise the family constitution to contain will be the values of the family. I know that, and this is why we probably do not have many family businesses in this part of the world, because talking about these issues may, they go down into our souls. When you say, let's search, what are our values? Some people don't really want to go, they don't want to be that vulnerable, but we have to get to that point if we really want the business to grow. So we have to talk about the values of the family. What's the relationship with the business? Why did we set up this business, or why are we involved in this business? Sometimes it's not the family that set up the business. Sometimes the family actually scouts for businesses that they want to, they want to be shareholders in. And so what's the relationship with the business? What are we doing with the business? What is the business, financing, all the families? What kind of profit do we want from the business? So all of these things need to be detailed so that there will be no trouble. There's a saying that says the faintest pen is, I think it says that it's sharper than the brightest memory, or something of that nature. You have to have these things written down. We also have, in the family constitution, you can also have the family institutions. These family institutions are not, they're not cast in stone. You don't have to have all the institutions at the onset, but you may want to just say that, maybe by year 5 or by year 20, or when we get to this particular number, we would need to set up, some committees for the family. In that family constitution, we also have policies, and guidelines, policies around dividends. At what point are we declaring dividend? When we declare dividend, it goes to the shareholders. What percentage are we declaring as dividend? Are we declaring dividend every year? Some of these things cause issues. Even when we are, some of us are shareholders in the likes of Cadbury and some of these big PLCs. And every year you're wondering, did they not declare dividend? Why am I not getting, alerts in my account? And every company has their dividend policy, and the families also need to state this for their businesses. What's the dividend policy? How do we want to share profit? What's the ownership structure? So are we just going to allow shareholders just sell their shares to non-family members? What's the process around, the drag? What's the drag along rights? What's the tag along rights? Are there any restrictive things? Do we want to have a right of first refusal when it comes to selling of shares? All these things need to be detailed in the family constitution. And, issues on shareholding also will be detailed in the shareholders agreement. There can never be too many agreements, to be honest, when it comes to families who are in business. The important thing is that everything needs to be documented so that it will reduce the tension, reduce the pressure, reduce the issues that may arise. So also in the family constitution, we also have the employment standards. So it's very important for employment standards to be put in place, because sometimes some families just have the notion of, oh, once Alex graduates from school, he's coming into the business. It shouldn't really work that way. If you really want a sustainable business, we cannot just employ people just because they're family members. So some of those standards need to be put in place. Do we want, the children to go and work elsewhere? It was one of the things I'll talk about on that succession. Do we want them to work elsewhere? At what stage do they come in? What degrees do they need to have for us to employ them? So all of these standards need to be put in place. The succession process, as Sir Essien mentioned, so succession process, transition plan, what's the retirement age? Some founders never really want to go, and sometimes until they have a heart attack, or there's this life-transforming or life-changing event that happens to them, then they now think of a succession plan. So all of that needs to be put in place from the get-go. The family compensation. Okay, so for those who are not actively involved or collecting a salary from the business, how are we compensating them because they are owners? And then career development policies. Sometimes the families really want to keep the business within the family. So you have to have a career development policy. Maybe that's the point where from when your child is 5, you're already saying there is a pharmaceutical company, so you study pharmacy. Some of those things, some people actually go to that extent just to groom their successors from a very tender age. So first, we'll talk about family. Next, we'll talk about family institutions. So family institutions are just organized structures within the family. And it's supposed to be, an avenue for family members to get together, to increase communication links between the family and the business. Typically, there's no, as I said earlier, there's no hard and fast rule onto what institutions are required, or a blueprint on these are the institutions that you need. The size of the business, the stage of the family's development, the number of family members, the degree of involvement of the family members in the business, all these things will help to determine what institutions are necessary for a family. So one of such institutions is the family assembly. I like this picture. It shows different colors of shoes. And that just shows that, in a family, the fact that we are related by blood doesn't mean that we are all alike. It doesn't mean that, all our interests are the same. And so it's important that, we have family assemblies, just like we had assemblies in primary school where, from nursery 1 to primary 6, everyone is there listening to the principal. That is exactly, the picture I want us to have in mind when we talk about family assembly, family meetings. When I was growing up, a couple of my friends would say, oh, we had family meeting, and it was strange to me. But now I understand, because I guess some of those people, their families were also involved in businesses. So these family meetings are very important. They are the formal forum where, family members are able to air their opinions, they voice their opinions. Sometimes it's held once a year or twice a year. There's no hard and fast rule. But some of the issues that can't be discussed or that should be discussed at a family assembly would be issues around family employment and compensation. It's at this family meeting that, some of these policies, the carcass of some of these policies will be drawn up at these meetings. The election of family council members, which is the next institution I'm going to talk about, family council. So who are those that we want to be principal family members that will take some of these decisions for us? How are we educating our family members about their rights and responsibilities in the business? All of these things should be discussed at a family assembly. Now, another institution that families can bring in is the family council or the family supervisory board. This typically would work where you have over 30 family members existing. At this stage, all 30 people cannot meet every week, to take decisions about, are we employing people now? Is it time to employ HR? Is it time to employ BD? It would slow down the business. So at this stage, it's important that, the family members have another body within them who would take some of these decisions at a faster rate. So this family council, ensures conflict resolution. They develop the major family policies. I mean, haven't heard everybody's opinion at the family meeting. You still need, a group of people, 3, 5, 7 people who would draw up these family policies, come back to the company. And there's also this, family council that relates with the board of directors of the company. So the board of directors will typically provide reports and, updates about the company to the family council, who would then report to the family at large. So you see these different small structures, how, intertwined and related they are, but they all help to allow these businesses remain sustainable over a period of time. Yes, so the family office. So the family office is slightly different. It's most times doesn't affect the business, but we also advise wealthy families, high net worth individuals, wealthy families especially, to have a family office. What a family office does basically is to be the administrative arm or the investment arm of a family. And this really doesn't have to do with the business, but the office is usually populated with professional managers. So you have the lawyers, the investment advisors, tax advisors, compliance, insurance, family planning, estate plan. So the family office has a team of professionals who advise the family on their different rights. So even though, they have the board or the advisory board that's advising them on the business, sometimes, they have other plans. So they have plans about, the education of their children. They have other plans that relate to their other investments, plans that relate to their taxes. So some of these things are better managed by a family office. The family office, they are already experts in how to advise families. Some of these families also want to relocate to another continent, relocate to another country. A family office would actually help, provide advice on these issues. So this is another institution that can be put in place by a family. So next we move to business governance. I heard the question on advisory board, and I think I beg to differ a bit about the culpability of members of an advisory board. An advisory board, as stated, are a team of people who provide advice. And because it's just advice that they provide, you can't really hold them to that advice. An advisory board, they are typically non-family members or group of experts that are formed when the board of directors are composed of family members. Now, the truth is that some families don't feel very comfortable with sharing business secrets with non-family members. And so, as much as, Sayesian also mentioned that, a typical good board, which would conform to good governance strategies, should have non-executive directors, should have independent non-executive directors. It brings a fair balance to the company. That way you have, people on the board who are not just emotionally attached to the business, which is what the family members are. They're emotionally attached to the business. You also have people who are thinking strategically, who are thinking more about the business than the family. That brings a very good balance to the management of that business. But some families really do not want that external. They don't want anybody that is not blood on their board. So what some of them do to also get that expert opinion is to have an advisory board. So the role of the advisory board is really to create a compromise solution between the family and an independent board. So it's a compromise solution for these kinds of families. And most of these families opt to create this advisory board as a way of getting outside advice and expertise. People on the advisory board, if you're looking at how to compose or constitute an advisory board, you shouldn't pick any member of the family. You shouldn't pick any friend of the family. Anyone who is emotionally linked to a family member should not be a member of the advisory board. The advisory board has to be very independent. It has to be people who are knowledgeable in the field of the business. It has to be people who are experts in the field. Sometimes people who are very connected and can also link, the business with possible clients, possible customers. Those are the people that you want on the advisory board. They're typically not a large board. A group of 5, 7 people. The advice is that on any board, you should have like an odd number so that at any given point in time when you need to take decisions, there's always a majority, vote. So on the advisory board, they are typically dominated by very independent people. And this is something that we also advise people to have. We advise NGOs to also have an advisory board, people who provide advice. Now, the truth is that there are advantages and disadvantages to this. Now, the advantages would be for the advisors. The advantages to the advisors are that they do not owe the company any fiduciary duty. They do not owe the company any duty of care or skill. And, for the company, you're not really bound to pay the advisory board. I mean, if you called me to be on your board, on your board of directors, I would expect that a form of remuneration package is prepared. But as an advisor, just the way we have mentors, the way we don't pay our mentors. At best, maybe at Christmas, you send them a cow or you send them a hamper. That's really what we do. So that's how I want us to actually picture an advisory board. Advisory board are just a team of advisors. People, you don't even have to bring them together, as it were, to say meet all the time. So it's very flexible. Just a team of people that you're a bit vulnerable with, and for them, I mean, they can't ask for any management records. They only work based on whatever you tell them. So they're not involved, so to speak. What they do is just provide advice based on, challenges or problems that you share with them. So they're just a team of advisors, basically. Now, the board of directors, on the other hand, provided by law, these ones are provided by law, and they owe the companies a fiduciary duty. They owe the company a duty of care. In fact, the framework of corporate governance rests on the shoulders of the board of directors. They are saddled with the full responsibility to ensure the effectiveness of corporate governance structures in a company. They are involved in the strategic management of the company. Board of directors, they make decisions and perform oversight functions over the management. Now, typically in a proper board, the board members should not be involved in the daily operations of the company. If not, they may not be able to properly function in that oversight role if they are involved in the day-to-day running. The board should be people that come in, quarterly and challenge some of the decisions that management has taken. They are there to, rejig us. They are there to, keep bringing to the mind of the management that this is the vision of the company. You are already going off. That is the role of, the board. And so the board of a family-owned company should add value to the business and not replicate activities. So the board of a family business shouldn't be involved in, they should only provide guidance. They shouldn't be involved in the operations of the business. At best, the MD, as Essien said, the MD would be a member of the board who is, doubling as head of, maybe the management team, but that's because he also has to report to the board. But at best, that's the only person that should be, involved in the daily operations of the business. Other than that, you need a board. You need people who have a clear mind about the business, people who are not, attached in any form, and people who can properly provide that strategic management for the business. Now, for this first leg, I will conclude by saying that, family businesses by nature face many challenges. And this is why, as a family business, you are very delicate. It's a very delicate space. It's a space that requires extra measures beyond, the typical corporate organization. But where these families adopt sound governance structures for the company and the family, these challenges can be addressed. As I said, some of these issues can be mitigated. Some of these issues can be avoided in some instances. So where these family businesses embed governance structures early, they are able to stay viable and become sustainable. So I'll just move next to the succession bit for family businesses. Now, Essien has really explained what succession is. But succession, as it means, succeed. You are succeeding me. I'm handing on the baton to you. Just like we see in a relay race, someone who has done their own lap and are ready to hand over the baton to you. The idea is that, if you're watching, if you watch the Olympics, a runner on lane 3 will only hand over the baton to someone on lane 3 and expect that you run on lane 3, all through. You cannot cross the lanes, which is what it is with succession. You want someone whose heart is also burning for the business. You want someone who wants to continue in the vision of the business. And even if, there'll be a deviation from the business, you want someone who, has a holistic view of the business. So you're not just bringing in, which is what happens in this side of the world. At some point, you just bring in your son. And some people have been there for 20 years, 15 years, and they've been going through the ranks, and you just bring in somebody and just say that this person is the new MD. It doesn't really work that way, and it may not help in the sustainability of the business. At some point, you just see that top management staff are leaving because Oga brought his son, and it shouldn't really be. So many family businesses do not make it past the second generation, as I said earlier, and only very few get to the third generation. I'm also watching out for the businesses in Nigeria here, who I believe are family businesses, which are Koschari's and Dangote Group. I know that if I'm very correct, one or two of the sons of Sir Cosmos Maduka, are in the management. And I'm just really looking to see how they handle succession when, the man eventually steps out of the business. The truth is that in Africa, we rarely want to step out of the business. The founders want to be there till they are 70. They never really give the chance. The truth, and it's one of the guidelines that we advise, is that at some point, retire and rest and watch the next generation run the business. At that point, you can even still provide guidance, you can still provide advice, but retire, step out of the business so that you can also watch, the dynamics of what the second generation brings in. The truth is that because we're in two different generations, we won't run the business the same way, which is the problem that many founders have. So because you did it like this for 45 years, and that's something we hear in Nigeria a lot. This is how it has always been done. We hear it a lot, and we don't even want there to be a change. But the truth is that if a 70-year-old man is handing over to a 44-year-old man, there will be a change. They're in different generations. There is bound to be, a rigid method of doing things, which they need to be open to. So the inability to effectively manage the family component of the business sometimes has proven to be a major stumbling block for family businesses when it comes to succession. So I mentioned that, there's the emotional element. As much as, some businesses are very strict, they don't just employ family members anyhow. There's also the sensitive part of, how about your son is still looking for a job? He finished from NYSC 2012 and he's still looking for a job, but you're saying, oh, because we have these rules that say you have to be 10 years, you can't just come into the business. Some of these issues are soft issues that need to be addressed, that can be addressed within the framework of family governance. So one of the guidelines I stated here is that family business succession is a process. It is not an event. It's, I said earlier that, some founders get to the point where, there's already a life-threatening issue, and then they remember that, oh, I'm 62, and this is a textile business, and I need to hand over. And they weren't even thinking of handing over all along because the man is the CEO and he's the chairman of the board, which is something that, if you go through the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, it has said that, both roles should be separated. The CEO and the chairman of the board should be different people, different human beings. Sometimes we want to be chairman, CEO, MD, founder. It's too much to be embedded in one person, and it doesn't really help in the growth of the business. So as I said, succession planning should be a process, not an event. The rule of thumb is that it probably will take about 10 years to plan for succession, to actually build up, a successor for the business. It's important that, if the goal is to hand over control or hand over, those key positions to family members, it's important to present it to the children very early. The truth is, times have really changed. At some point, it was whatever the parents said you should study, you study. I know some of my friends who, I know someone who, after finishing engineering, gave the parents a certificate and went to be a pilot. I'm guessing, you know, he just did those 5 years in Unilag engineering, grumbling just for the parents. I wonder what they wanted the certificate for, but he really wanted to be a pilot. He's a pilot today. But I'm just wondering if, you know, if he just went straight to piloting school, he might have cut off those 5 years and just, you know, he might have even, I mean, done more things, you know, in that regard. So it's important to, you know, just open up to the children early, you know, and begin to groom them, begin the process of succession very early. Another thing is to involve family members through family meetings. The truth is, not all family members want to be involved in the business. Not all of them want to be going through financial statements, profit and loss, and going through all the headache of running a business. Some of them just want to be owners, meaning that they just want to receive dividend at the end of the year. It's important that, you know, parents or, you know, founders ask these questions at the family meetings. Who are those that want to be actively involved in the business? And, you know, at these family meetings, which we said, you know, at the family assembly is where, you know, succession issues, ownership and management succession issues should be discussed. So at this point, it's important to know, you know, who are the family members that will be employed at, you know, who are those that will be managers in the business. Is it every family member that can actually handle management? We need to understand everyone's strengths and weaknesses. Not everyone can handle management. And it's important that you don't just throw people in to the deep ocean and expect that they swim when they never went through any swimming classes. So it's important that, you know, at these family meetings, all these issues are discussed. Another guideline I've written here is that present the business as an option, not an obligation, especially when this is really for when you're bringing in your children, bringing in children. Many children want to follow, I mean, many people hope that their children will follow in their footsteps. So I'm a lawyer, and now I expect that my daughter will also be a lawyer so that, you know, when we pass on, she will keep running Acuity Partners. It doesn't work that way. The truth is, these days, there are so many more professions or, you know, career choices that people have, and their minds are open to so many things. Some people are playing football and earning so much more money than I will earn in 10 years together. They're earning it in a year, in a month sometimes, you know, and we cannot restrict these people because we want them to be a part of the business. The truth is, your children can remain owners of the business. They don't have to be involved in the management of the business. So it's important that, you know, you present these options to them at an early stage. And where children, I'm sorry that I'm talking more about family, but it's also very dear to my heart. Where children want to explore other fields, it's okay to allow them explore other fields. If at the point, you know, at a certain stage where you're grooming them and they fall out and say they don't want to be involved, that's why, you know, it's good that there was a succession plan. It's good that, you know, Saise mentioned something about an emergency leadership plan. What happens where the child falls out and says, I'm no longer interested? There has to be a plan to have, you know, somebody else within the business. A non-family member can run the business and it will still be a family-owned business. Remember that a non-family member is just involved in the management. It's just involved, you know, in the management of the business and not the control. The family can still have control. So some decisions cannot be taken without the family. Those are some of the control mechanisms that can be embedded in the family, even where the family members are not actively involved in management. Another guideline here is let successors get outside experience. Sometimes from internship, the children are already in the business. It may not really help. In some instances, it may help, you know, but what if after 10 years in the business, the child now says, I'm not interested anymore and steps out? Would it not have been better if, you know, if they gained, you know, outside experience working for someone else? That way, you know, they're able to build their own identity. In, you know, when you're working for someone else, it's different from when you're working for your dad. When you're working for your dad, there's always there's like a leeway of I can come in at any time. No matter how disciplined that child is, there's the little foxes will still come up of, you know, you're just negligent in something because it's owned by my dad. But when you're working for someone else and you know that your salary is on the line, you know that, you know, you can get a query. Those are some of the things that, you know, founders need to think about, and allow successors get outside experience, allow them receive criticism, allow them know that, you know, there's no perfect boss, there's no perfect business. Let them get that outside experience so that when they come back into the business, they're able to run it more effectively. My last guideline would be that, train successors. Never assume that, because this child was class captain from primary 1 to primary 5, prefect and all of that, they will be so fantastic in business. Business is a different ball game. It's important that, if the goal of the family is to keep management or keep, control within the family, it's important that, children are exposed to these business skills. Send them to business schools. Let them garner these experiences and knowledge from other organizations. Let them get, educated on how to run that business. Bring them in, let them go for workshops, train successors, even when the successors are not family members. If they are non-family members and that you're grooming within the business, it's important to send staff to train it. It was something I really enjoyed in one of the places where I worked. There were so many trainings. It's important to train employees because it's really for your own good. I know that sometimes as business owners, we don't really want to spend money. And you're like, that training is in dollars, or that training is in LSE in London. But if you think about it on the long run, it's helpful to the business. You're building someone to take over the business. So in conclusion, I would say that, having a good succession plan in any business, be it a family business or just an ordinary corporate, is very important. It will help in the sustainability of the business. It will ensure that there are no disruptions. It will also minimize tax implications for all parties. So this is the end. I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Olufunke Olumide, for that insightful and well-researched presentation. We have taken away, you've said quite a number of things, some of which are as follows. You've given us examples of family businesses that have lived long, particularly those of them outside the country. And then also talked about the stages of growth of the businesses. And then you brought in the concept of family governance. We've all been talking of corporate governance, but now you brought in family governance also into the picture. And you also talked of the need to bring in someone, not just bring in a family member, but someone who has a vision, who is interested in taking the business to the next level. I think that is very, very key. And then you've also talked of the fact that people need to retire at some point in time and allow others to take over the affairs of the business. And they also talked of the fact that family business succession is a process and not an event. Very, very key. And these are many more that you have said to really spice up this presentation. And I know that our participants have also taken one or two things away from your presentation. So dear participants, at this point, we've listened to our presenter for this afternoon. So it's time for us to take questions, comments, and observations. So I'll move straight to the chat box. We have a question there. Okay, Mr. Shaw is thanking our presenter for the presentation. Then Banke Orimolade is asking, said, please, can you shed more light on succession planning for an NGO? You should shed more light on succession planning for an NGO.
All right. So typically, I know that, NGOs usually are registered as incorporated trustees. And so they would have 3 to 5 or 7 trustees. Over time, some of the trustees, I recall a school where I worked before, we had a client that was a school, and at some point the school just realized that all the trustees were dead. only one trustee was alive, and it was very difficult for them at that stage to bring in more trustees. They had to go to court and all of that. So even at that stage, there should be a constitution. Every NGO has a constitution, and that constitution should also say how many years, what's the tenure of the trustees. At some point they leave, younger people come on board. That is also a measure of succession planning for that NGO. The constitution should detail how new management will come on board for the NGO. So that's a succession plan for the NGO.
Okay, thank you very much. Participants, do we have any other question or comments? Anybody who has a question, please indicate, or you type same in the chat box. Okay, so Mrs. Sophia Abiri Franklin has raised her hand. So she'll be unmuted so that she can ask her question. Mrs. Sabiri Franklin, just a minute, you'll be unmuted.
She can.
Okay, you can unmute yourself and speak. Please go ahead, ma'am. Mrs. Sabiri Franklin, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. This topic is very dear to my heart. I want to thank this presenter for well-delivered presentation. Well, the issue of succession planning in family business, because the issue, we said family businesses and NGOs, we can even group NGOs into family business, because when those are set up at the same, from the definition of family businesses, we have at least members in the family. You can also in that view that NGO as a family business. So I just what is really key to me from this is just like comment. You said that a typical succession plan would require at least 10 years. And I'm just thinking about the group of people I know. I mean, the average, let's say in their 50s.
Hello, Mrs. Abiri Franklin. We seem to have lost you. Can you please take the question again? Okay, you are out. Please, can you try and come back quickly?
Okay.
Okay, please take your question again.
Okay, sorry about that. So I said, you from your presentation, you said the average succession plan would require at least 10 years. How would you present, I mean, apart from a sudden life occurrence that happens when you an illness, house, suddenly to die in 6 months, how you were pushed to this kind of family to say, look, we need to actually do at this point. I don't, maybe you can share, because it's one area where we have been concerned. Like I said, the average businessman, even in late 60s, you see planning like the last 100 years. Nobody's even thinking that, oh, this business I'll have for 5 years, I need to leave. So
Mrs. Sabiri Franklin, you are off again. You may consider, I don't know, maybe you may consider typing it into the chat box so that we can get the whole flow. Because at some point you are breaking, and if we don't get you very well, it might be difficult for the presenter to really do justice to your question. So I think maybe you should consider typing it in, unless you are sure your network is in order, then you go ahead and ask your question. My suggestion, though.
Okay, I think I heard a huge chunk of what she was asking. So let me try say it back. So I think you were asking about, a founder who is already in their 50s or 60s, and you're still trying to get them to even have a succession plan. The truth is, you can only do so much. The vision for any business still lies in the heart of the founder, and it still lies within them to know how they want to live the business. Some of them, I still spoke to a founder recently, and he said he was even tired and he doesn't really care what happens after he leaves. And that's for someone who's running a law practice. He doesn't have any succession plan. His own is when he leaves, whoever is the staff will continue. The truth is that some businesses will end up like that. At best, what you can do is to just provide the advantages of him, beginning to prod a successor from now. What you can actually do is just to provide him advantages to having a succession plan, and hope and pray that he puts in these measures just before he leaves the business.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Dear participants, do you have any other question? Any question or contribution? You have any question or contribution? This is the time. Any question? Is there anybody indicating through the raise of hand? Any question? Any observation? Okay, we can't see any, nobody seems to be asking any question. Nobody has any contribution to make. Okay. Okay. Well, I think at this point, in the absence of any other question or contribution from any of the participants, then we can as well call it a day. And so at this point, we would like to once again thank our presenter, Olufunke Olumide, for that in-depth presentation.